Hi, good afternoon, and I know for some of you it's good morning. Thank you for joining us on this webinar today. Just to do some introductions, my name's Tom. I'm a solution specialist here at Technica, and I work with a large number of our clients, helping them to get ready for some of their biggest on sales. Fortunate enough today to be joined by our CEO and co-founder, Jeremy Gidlow. What we're going to do today in terms of a run through is Jeremy's going to talk a little bit of a summary about his talk that he gave at the Ticketing Business Forum last week. I'll then close off with just a little bit of a summary of that and what we do for some of the businesses in the ticketing space. And we'll end on a Q&A session. So if anyone does have any questions, happy to take them. If you can pop them in the question box, and we'll cover them at the end. But without further ado, I'd like to thank you all for joining, and I'll pass over to Jeremy to get started.
Thanks, Tom. As Tom said, this is a summary of the talk that I did at the recent ticketing exhibition. So to introduce myself, I'm Jeremy. I'm the co-founder of Technica. I founded the business some 10 years ago, together with Andy Still, the CTO of the company. The essence of the company was to create a full-service company that could solve performance and scalability issues in complex IT systems. During the course of that, we have developed a couple of things very relevant into the ticketing sector. For a start, we built two ticketing engines from the ground up, custom ticketing engine solutions for a couple of the largest ticket selling companies in the UK. That gave us a lot of insight into this specific area. And it was during the course of helping those kind of customers and others across retail, insurance, other finance services companies, we realised there was a true challenge of managing peak capacity in systems effectively. And this is where the very first ideas of Traffic Defender came from, and the idea was born. So the purpose of Traffic Defender, the idea that we have principally here, is that
we're having some difficulty broadcasting. I'm just going to just check. Great, that should cover it.
Okay, it was a problem with video, not audio, was it? Yeah, fine. Okay. Well, hopefully you can see the deck now. So, the approach that we took was we realised that it was important to give control and insight into internet traffic, and there were no solutions that existed in the market that really gave you this true layer 7 insight and control, granular control over your traffic. And there were two problems that we were really trying to solve here. How do you cope with peak capacity, and then how do you manage and get value, the best value out of the traffic that you see? So we took a view that the best approach to this was to build a behavioural analysis system that could process and analyse real-time traffic and give you that insight, and then enable you to determine how you wanted to manage and route that traffic. So the first area that we picked to focus on was around queuing. And this was to build a solution that could give you intelligent queuing and give you solve some of the real problems of queuing that exist in the market: fairness, the ability to give you first in, first out. We've taken very much our experience of performance and scaling in complex systems and applied our knowledge to that to give a system that would be robust, resilient, secure, and incapable of being bypassed. So there are a lot of systems that exist in the marketplace. Well, I say a lot, a few systems that exist in the marketplace. Most of those are based around the JavaScript solution, which is relatively easy to bypass. So we wanted to build a system that you couldn't do that to and would be transparent to the users. The user wouldn't know that another system was being used within the on the ticketing platform. So we tackled that first, built in the queuing features that exist in the product. This allows you to manage multiple different queues, so you could choose to have different events running at different times, choose which one you want to give priority to, which one you would like to queue for, others that you'd like to grant access to, and also allow you to grant access to VIPs and other people that you wish to not be held in a queue, should you wish to do that. But nobody really likes queuing. It is an aspect that is a necessary evil within queuing, within ticketing. But the desire really is to, if insofar as possible, manage traffic in such a way that that may not occur. And one of the ways that you can tackle with that is you can tackle the aspect of automated traffic. The slide that we've got up at the moment shows a breakdown that we would typically see on a system, and you can see that the minority of the traffic is human traffic in this case, and we see great variation from 5 to 95% being automated traffic on a site. Here you can see that this snapshot that we have here shows that mixture of truly bad traffic, hackers, fraud, that kind of thing, truly good traffic, search engine spiders, and then the whole area of grey that exists in the middle. For example, spinner bots, which are definitely bad traffic. But you can have other reseller parties in there, anybody who might remarket tickets or that kind of thing, which you might wish to allow. So we built a system that works on a behavioural analysis component to this, so we can identify from the activity that's taking place on the site. This enables us to cope with bot mutation. I'm sure if you've ever had any experience of trying to block or target robotic or bot activity on the site, it can be a never-ending war as the traffic in question evolves and IP addresses are rotated, signatures are changed, activity and patterns change. But with the approach that we've taken through using behavioural analysis, an example of which you can see here is the output of this, you can see that robotic traffic sits as some very clear outliers, the things shown as the coloured circles that sit up to the top right of this, and they're quite easy to identify using this particular approach. So Traffic Defender was conceived to enable you to take as much revenue through a ticketing platform as possible, and this was a twin balance here of both queuing at peak capacity was exceeded so that you can still transact, but ideally to make sure that the customers that you want get through to the system and that you can manage that effectively. Failure to do that, if you don't manage robotic traffic, results in customer issues, bad press, and more recently, pressure from artists to prevent reselling of tickets on secondary markets immediately after tickets go on sale. So all of these are the bad aspects that you see with robotic traffic. So that's the background for Traffic Defender. Traffic Defender has been built to be robust, scalable, secure, and behavioural driven to give you this true insight and then granular control over the traffic to maximise revenue and minimise threat. So I'll hand over to you, Tom, to take it from here.
Great, thanks for that, Jeremy. Yes, I'll take over from here. And what I'm going to do is just talk a little bit more in detail about how we actually achieve some of the things that Jeremy spoke about and what that can actually look like for our customers, particularly in the ticketing space. First of all, and I think one of the key design considerations that Jeremy alluded to there in his talk was that as a solution, we should remain completely transparent. So here you'll see just a couple of samples of actually, what could a queue page look like for a customer. But because of the way we implement and the way we work with businesses, we do remain a completely almost silent partner. No one ever knows that we're on a site, and they'll only ever see us when there is a queue. But at that point, when they are seeing us and there is a queue, we're giving you the ability to completely customize that message, completely customize that URL, whilst we're putting that user into the queue and into that virtual rating room. And you can see here, just as I give you sort of a bigger picture, just the amount of data that Jeremy was talking about there. I think the first thing we do for most businesses we've worked with is give them some real deep insight into actually what's going on, what can they see, and exactly, I think one of the common questions we would help people answer is if someone was to say, how much of my traffic is bot traffic, that's exactly what we help you do with the solution today. Just as a very quick high level, just in terms of what we aim to do for businesses and in terms of how we implement the solution, one of the keys for us is that we implement in a very different way to some of the other solutions out there in the market, and that is via a DNS or a CNAME change. So effectively what we do is we sit completely in front of your infrastructure, typically behind a CDN, DDoS protection if you have it, or if you don't have any of those sort of things in place, we'd sit typically behind the DNS server. And there's a couple of benefits and reasons why we do this. The first, of course, is that because we sit in front, we actually protect all of your infrastructure. We're protecting from spikes on the load balancers, the firewalls, any potential limits you have. And we're also making sure that, some of our clients do have extremely significant spikes over a short period of time, that spike isn't hitting your infrastructure at all. So there is no calls to your web server from large volumes of traffic. We handle that. At the point at which you would receive more traffic than you can typically handle, that's when we pass them off into our fair and transparent queue and waiting room solution. So it gives us the ability to actually make sure we give you thorough protection of your website. It's our responsibility to handle it and make sure that we're in charge of the traffic and only let it through what you can cope with. It also means that we're much more secure. So we're fully PCI compliant. It means it's much harder for people to bypass the solution. We haven't had anyone achieve it yet. And the core reason for that is because we're seeing all of the traffic coming through to your site, and we're then able to control it. Moving on, just in terms of some of the features and functionality we do offer. First of all, just to touch on availability. Of course, we're sat in front of your system. Jeremy mentioned one of our key and core design concerns and key priorities with scalability. So effectively what we do when we do sit in front of your system is we give every client their own dedicated infrastructure spread across multiple availability zones. Typically, as a minimum, able to handle up to 1 million people in a queue, but completely horizontally and vertically scalable. And we support that with 24/7 support here via phones. So if you do have any issues, we're always here. And it's because of that way we set up that we've been able to achieve 100% uptime for the duration of having the product over the past 3 years. The other thing I will say is because of the way we implement via DNS, we do actually have an on-off switch within the system, which means we could be brought in and out of line within sort of 60 seconds for anyone with potentially a surprise event, or just looking to take us out of line while their event is finished and calmed down. So it does give us that flexibility, security, and the scalability. In terms of other features within the solution, we do have the ability to prioritize users. We can have VIPs. We can whitelist and manage traffic that you need to hit the site. This could be server monitoring. It could be development partners. It could be yourselves. We give you the ability to control the traffic, and we do push heavily on reporting. So we give you full reporting of everything that's going on at any one time. I think here we're talking about the VIP access. So if you did want to allow a certain group of people priority into an on-sale, what we can do is we can give them a cookie or send them to a specific URL to make sure they bypass the queue. I think the other key thing to mention as well is that whilst people are in the queue, we do give you the ability to change that in real time. So we're constantly giving you the ability to change how many people you have on that website in real time. And that's based on the number of sessions. So we're constantly checking how active people are on your site and then allowing them to get in once there is space. This has two key benefits. Number one, because we're using the sessions and how many people you can actually cope with, it allows us to set a limit that you can handle. And number two, it means that we can actually check that people are active. So we're constantly checking that actually the people on your site are the people that are ready to buy tickets. Help you sell out in as quick a time as possible. The second phase of our implementation, once we have the queuing and protection in to protect you from a big on sale, is really looking at that traffic and starting to figure out actually how much of it is human and how much of it do you want to allow on the website. Just a very quick summary on the bot management piece. It does slot seamlessly into the Traffic Defender queuing solution, but it can be implemented wholeheartedly on its own via an API, a CDN integration, or in a similar way to the Traffic Defender solution by sitting in line. We take a couple of different approaches. And the first and most obvious one, which a lot of vendors will do, and the recommendation that everyone we speak to should really have in place, is a reputational database. So a reputational database of known and bad malicious traffic that's out there. All the traffic that's hitting you, we're constantly checking in real time. Has it actually been part of fraudulent activity somewhere on the internet in the past? Is this a potential risk? And flagging that to you. And then the more sophisticated part where we come in is the behavioural analysis. And so this is where we're using machine learning and our data science experts here to actually look at what normal traffic looks like on your site. And as Jeremy showed earlier, actually what do bots look like and how do they stand out? Once we've done that, our machine learning is pretty good at being able to spot spinners, scrapers and scalpers and various different types of activity based on the behaviour. And once we see all this, the key is then putting that into a threat score, feeding that information back to you and giving you the ability to actually control, actually on this on sale, do I want to allow the bots, do I not, and giving you the ability to manage it in a number of different ways. So really, a total solution for number one, managing spikes in traffic, but number two, actually then being able to control actually who is in the system at any one time, and are we prioritizing the right users? So the real goal here, and the thing that we've helped many people achieve, is ensuring that the websites stay up during key peak events. In terms of the system itself, in terms of some of the people we've helped, it was originally developed in partnership with one of Europe's lead e-commerce retailers, and we helped them as they prepared for the TV advertising campaign that they had with shows such as PTK, Coronation Street, and the X Factor finals. And what they saw was they actually saw spikes of up to 40 times their biggest peak ever. And Traffic Defender was able to sit there and make sure that actually they only received the traffic they could handle, protect their brand, protect that investment into advertising, and we queued several 100,000 people for a minute or so to keep their site up and actually maximise their sales and coverage. We also work with, as I mentioned, quite a number of people in the actual ticketing business, particularly quite a few users utilising the queuing solution that we have in place today. Would be people like Roundhouse. The solution enables them to manage a number of on-sales that they could have at any one time and really protect their infrastructure and particularly any third-party bottlenecks they have. So really allowing venues out there to have a really seamless on-sale experience, sell out as quickly as possible, and ensure that they're giving a fair experience to all the customers. A couple of things we didn't mention about the product, but of course we'll take questions at the end. It is fully integratable via an API, so it can be completely programmatically controlled, and also it allows us to protect things like mobile apps. So we do have a number of people where we've worked with them on protecting their native mobile apps. I think one of the most commonly known case studies and businesses we've worked with in the past would be The Voice. So at the time, The Voice was the #1 trending app in the UK. They were coming up to the finals and they knew there was going to be a lot of people voting. We actually worked with The Voice to protect their system for up to 1 million concurrent users voting at any single time and protect that mobile app. So mobile apps, we're seeing more and more tickets being purchased on them, and it's an area that we like to work with people and protect. Finally, we mentioned how security and fairness is at the absolute heart of what we do. I think one of the ultimate tests for us as a product was when we actually sat in front of the QuakeCon ticket and on sale. QuakeCon, for those that don't know, is the largest bring your own computer gaming conference in the world. So at this time, there's a lot of sophisticated technology people out there, particularly trying to bypass the queue and get QuakeCon tickets. There was actually a forum where there was a number of things talking about how you could try and bypass the system and people really trying to get around it. But fortunately, as we said, because of the design principles put in place, we were able to give QuakeCon and their customers a fair experience, make sure that it was a first in and first out sale. So certainly used to sort of standing up to some of the strictest scrutiny when it comes to people trying to bypass that queues. And finally, as I mentioned, I think it's just worth pointing out that we're not just solely in ticketing. We do work with events and businesses all around the world in various different sectors. One of the most famous ones, I would say, one of the biggest brands would be Behavioural, and we've recently helped them to achieve 3 of their biggest and most successful Black Fridays year on year on year. So a very good customer for us with a lot of traffic, and not just on key events, but could be key shopping days or TV advertising sponsorship. If anyone does have any questions, just to let you know, we're coming towards the end now. I'm happy to take those as they come in. I can see a few already built up, so I'll be covering those in a few minutes. But as Jeremy mentioned, we've been in the industry of ticketing since he founded the company. We've worked with numerous businesses all around the globe, helping them to improve their performance and scalability problems and really help them give a better user experience, no matter what the actual spike was that we're facing. But just to summarize, I think from our perspective, if we're going to protect a website, we're going to put a waiting room solution in place. A queue requires that insight in traffic and behavior. There's no point spending all our time putting people in a queue that's full of bots. We help people protect and understand, what that traffic is and prioritize who they want to let in. Our DNS-based approach to queuing is actually, we find sort of preferable for a lot of the enterprise businesses we work with to give them complete protection of their infrastructure, improved security, scalability, and really lead to successful on sales for them. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move on to a couple of questions that we've had come in, and then we'll close up. So if anyone does have any more, please do get them to me, but I'll just cover these off. So the first one coming in, what is the latency impact of the solution being in line? I think latency is a great question. Jeremy mentioned that in Technica was formed as a performance business, so it's always been a key consideration. Obviously, we do sit in line, and because then, as with anything sits in line, we are reverse proxy, and there is the potential to add latency. What I would say around that is we haven't to this day, in the 3 years we've been trading, hundreds of sites we sat in front of had an issue with latency that stopped anyone sort of adopting the solution. Typically we can see it's anywhere between 1 to 3 milliseconds, but it's something we always like to test out with people. So it's a great question, something that we're more than happy to show people in a live scenario. Another one was how many concurrent users do you support on the live site before we need to queue? Interesting question. I think it really depends. You've got to understand how many concurrent users you can cope with, and then we can set it to whatever you want. We scale out a system, as I said, horizontally and vertically to meet whatever demand you think you're expecting and go above that. So really we can set it to whatever you wish it to be, and make sure we allow as many people in as you can cope with. Someone else here just asking about the price model. We can be pretty flexible on costs. We understand the nature of the ticketing industry. I'm looking at the particular person that's asking, which is a football club. So we can be really tailored in terms of the solution. We understand that you might not need it all year round, so we offer a couple of different options. The first is that we can have an all year round solution where we're protecting your site from any potential surprises, and we can be always on. We have another solution where we can be in all year, but you can turn us on for a given number of days. I'd say that's what we call the passive option, and that's the most adopted. And I'd say the final option is we do short-term licenses. So if anyone does potentially just have one event a year, one big on sale, if you are a football club, if it is just about one big match, then we can help people with one-off events as well. So another question just come in, how do you actually queue people using native mobile apps? That's a great question. In terms of the way the platform has been designed, effectively Traffic Defender is an engine, be it a bot or in its waiting room state. All it understands is what's coming in and what's going out and how much it needs to let in or out. So effectively what we do is we would typically sit in between the mobile app. We would understand via a call how many people are coming in, and at the point at which we'd say that the mobile app's starting to reach its capacity, we'll then push back a message and start to delay the responses. So how we've done this with people in the past is that the app will sort of ask how many people, will be letting us know how many people are in. We'll be forwarding it onto the back-end infrastructure, and at the point at which we feel that the infrastructure is full, we'll serve back a message to the app saying actually it's too busy, make that request in a couple more seconds. And then the app goes off and makes the request a couple more seconds, and we'll keep serving it that way. That's enabled us to put up to 1 million concurrent people on some apps before. So certainly tried and tested, and something we can tailor for most businesses out there depending on their actual app deployment. I think there's just another one here. Can I reset the queue when my tickets go on sale to stop anyone who has logged in earlier in the morning? Of course. I think actually managing sort of ticket releases or any priority sort of event is absolutely key. Planning is becoming more and more important as users are becoming more and more savvy to what people do. We've certainly seen over the years that we've been in the industry that sites can quite often fill up prior to an on sale. So what we do is, yes, we can absolutely set the queue. So effectively, for some businesses, we can have what we call a holding page, which is where you can almost take a portion of the site or the site offline for 20 minutes before an on sale, make sure it's empty and do a countdown. We've done that for some big businesses before. Or we can also put a queue page up in front of a specific area or the whole site, set it to 0, ensure that that's flushed out, and then once the sale comes on, people will fill into that queue in real time, and we let them in an orderly fashion, even if they have been waiting since 6 in the morning. So, yeah, we can absolutely do that. That's something we would recommend. Have you had any customers block their customers while trying to block the bots? So, in terms of blocking of bots, I think it's very important that we deal with sort of the topic of false positives. They're a key thing in the industry, and there's a lot of solutions in this place. We take a very cautious approach to the blocking of bots, depending on what they are, particularly in the ticketing space. If we're looking at account takeover, I think you want to be very aggressive on the blocking. If we're looking at any potential fraud or hacks into an account, I think that's certainly something we want to look at in an aggressive manner and stop anything that we're certain is a malicious attack. When we're talking more about spinner, scraper, sniper, scalper bots, though, I think, again, it's important to be cautious. What I would say is we work with businesses very closely to understand what the traffic's like. We have a team who works with you to understand actually what we think you should mitigate and start to control. That will be agreed with a client on a client-by-client basis. And typically one of the first things we'll do is we'll serve an advanced capture. So even if there was, which we try and limit to keep to a minimum, we haven't had many in a long time, but a false positive, we'll be shown a capture that a real human user could get past. But it's important to mention that capture is an advanced capture. So we're not talking about the Google reCAPTCHA that we typically see bypassed these days by click forms. We're talking about a much more advanced capture that we serve that's much more difficult for anyone trying to automate their way out of. And final question, I'm just looking if there's any more come in. We've got one last one. I'm looking at an infrastructure upgrade as part of our cloud adoption. Do you have any evidence of your customers reducing their infrastructure requirements? I think that's a really interesting question. It's certainly one that I think everyone in ticketing needs to probably take more seriously than most other sectors. We speak to a lot of people who run a lot of infrastructure all year round to support maybe 1 to 4 on sales a year. Of course, we can help by helping you manage that. So effectively, we work with a number of people, helping them to halve their infrastructure by putting the queue in place and making sure that actually, 364 days of the year, they're absolutely fine. They don't need to run those 10 servers. They can run 5. And on the extra day, we provide that buffer to ensure they can cope with the excess traffic. So certainly something we can help with. We do have a number of clients where we've offered cost savings on that, but it's really about judging that balance of actually, how much infrastructure do you need to support the demand that you're going to have, and what is the right user experience you want to put out there. Ultimately, it's about selling the tickets as quickly and as fairly as possible. So we'd always advise upscaling infrastructure to the right purpose. But of course, if you only have 100 tickets and 100,000 people trying to get them, it does feel a bit excessive to run that infrastructure for 100,000 people when there'll never be enough tickets. So it's a consideration, certainly one that we're happy to talk through with people. But yeah, I think I've closed off on all of the questions. If anyone does have any more, please do get in touch. I know that our market team will be following up with just a copy of this webinar, a copy of the information, and giving you the ability to reach out to us if you do want to ask any questions. If you would like to know anything else about the work we do in the space, be it performance engineering, the development work, or particularly, in my field, the product and how we help people improve their on sales, do get in touch. More than happy to have a conversation. But I'd just like to take a moment to thank Jeremy for joining us today, and thank you all for being part of this webinar. Thanks, everyone.